Joining me now is New South Wales Independent MP Tanya Mihalich and former New South Wales Police Minister David Elliott. Hi to both of you. Thank you so much for joining me. Look, I want to get your reaction first, of course, to the political assassination of Charlie Kirk this week. David, it's been an awful 24 hours. What do you make, firstly, of the left's reaction and the response that we've seen from the left on this? I mean, the hypocrisy, I feel, is on sheer display.
Well, it's disgusting, and I have been amused by the fact that this is a political movement that is opposed to gun violence and opposed to guns, but they're quite happy to celebrate when one of them is used for a political assassination. They're prepared to say that, the right are terrible because they restrict freedom of speech by not allowing us to protest, but they celebrate a man who was exercising his freedom of speech and shot. There is no... I mean, I can't fathom the Conservatives in the Western world behaving this way if somebody like Hillary Clinton died or if somebody like Tony Blair died. So it does show... And it's very unhealthy because what will happen now is the crazy right-wingers will use this as an excuse to further their own sometimes radical agenda.
Well, I mean, that is a good point. But what do you think, Tanya, what will happen now with the Conservative movement? Do you think this will only just embolden, voices like ours to keep speaking out?
I think it will embolden them. I think, look, as cruel fate will have it, Charlie Kirk, the very symbol of vitality and youth and America's aspirational youth, will be forever young. And I think it's such a tragedy, and it's got to be said because, it's hope's dashed, so much potential, unrealised potential with him. I mean, there was talk all week, in the last few days that he could have been, potential president down the track. So it is such a tragedy. And I think it's going to take not just days and weeks and months, but a very long time for particularly young people, but Conservatives as well, to come together again. And they will come back and remain emboldened. And I think Turning Point, his own organisation's come out and said they'll continue to spearhead the legacy that Charlie Kirk had and continue to talk to young people. And it's so important that political discourse is not stifled as a result. That's the bigger issue.
I agree.
Will people stop rallying? Will people stop coming together and talking on issues? The worst thing we could see happen out of this is that everyone goes back indoors, stops communicating, stops talking, because what he did was so important for young people and particularly for aspirational America.
We can't be silent about this, as simple as that. The left love to silence debate, will certainly not be silenced. Now, look, let's talk about the opposition leader Susan Lee sacking Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price this week for her comments on Indian migration and for failing to endorse her leadership. David, did she have any choice? Did she do the right thing?
Well, she did have to sack Jacinta, as tragic as that is. And your latter point was the reason why she was sacked. I mean, yes, she said the wrong thing and the apology was half-winded. But when Jacinta unfortunately said the leadership of Susan Lee is a matter of the party room, that's like saying that the coach has the full confidence of the board, or yes, I'll respect you in the morning. I mean, that's the last line you make in that position. Now, I think that she'll be back, and I think that Susan Lee wants her to come back at some stage. She's too much of a vote magnet. But I think Jacinta's big problem this week was her failure to endorse Susan Lee as the leader of the Liberal Party. I think everything else she could have batted on through.
Well, I just think that Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price, Tanya, is a true leader, and I think she's one of a small handful of politicians who says it like it is, and that's why I think a lot of Aussies do like her, because she's got a backbone, she's got a spine, and she stands up for Australian values. But what do you think happens next year?
Well, Jacinta is somebody who's so incredibly authentic and really does connect with ordinary Australians, and I've seen her at some events, and people love her. They love talking to her. They do connect with her. And look, she's got 10 times more followers and supporters than Susan Lee. What does that tell you? I think this is a problem for Susan Lee, and I think the way she handled this week was a problem too. She had the opportunity to apologise to the Indian Australian community straight away. She didn't need to wait for Jacinta if that was the real issue for her. I think her statement of having a Melbourne Cup filled of reasons as to why she got rid of Jacinta was appalling. The fact that she put the issue about the Indian Australian community, but then also she was offended as well. Well, which issue is it that you're sacking Jacinta Price on? Which one? And the problem for the Liberal Party right now is she was invited to be part of the Liberal Party, Jacinta Price. She's an asset. they've got to manage this and provide the necessary support they need to keep her going, because otherwise I think Matt Canavan and the Nats are going to welcome her back with open arms. I think they'd love to have her back in the National Party. The National Party, we know, allows a lot more independent thought and discussion than the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party seem to be wanting to follow the Labor Party's playbook, and that is about stifling debate and keeping people silent.
I don't think the Liberal Party knows what they stand for right now. So, well, she's on the backbench. She can say whatever the heck she wants, and I'm sure that she certainly will. She will, yeah, absolutely. Now, look, the Prime Minister's been conflating anti-Semitism with Islamophobia since October 7, 2023, and today his special envoy for Islamophobia handed down his report. Have a look.
The targeting of Australians based on their religious beliefs is not only an attack on them, but it's an attack on our core values.
The Islamophobia Register has recorded a 150% increase in verified in-person Islamophobic incidents by November 2024.
David, why is Labor still conflating these two issues?
Well, you're quite right to question that. And I think the fact that we're singling out one faith over all the other faiths is racist. I think what we should be saying is, why do we have faith-based racism in this country? Why are the Hindus getting chastised by other faiths? Why are Muslims, Jews, Orthodox? Well, I mean, every religious faith in Australia at the moment is under attack. And so what they need to do is make sure that they reach out to all of them and say, faith-based discrimination is not allowed in this country under any circumstances. But highlighting one over the other makes those that are victims of discrimination and race-based hatred that aren't being represented in this sort of presentation feel that they're not going to be part of Australia. And that's what causes terrorism. Let me tell you, as a former counter-terrorism minister, we push these people into feeling completely removed from Australian society, and that's when the extremists get hold of them and they push them into extremist views and they do extremist things. And so highlighting one person, one faith over another is very, very dangerous, because it's the faiths that we lead aside and we ignore and we don't embrace that are the ones that are going to be will be the next round of extremist behaviour.
Look, I think that's a real fair point. I guess, you know, my thing about this, Tanya, is that we're seeing anti-Semitism on a daily basis. We've got Jewish Australians scared all the time, and yet Labor haven't done anything to help the Jewish community, realistically, since October 7, 2023. But suddenly we've got this Islamophobia report as well, and now where are the priorities?
It's all optics for Albanese, we know this. And it's interesting because there's 54 recommendations coming out of this report today. I'd be interested to see how many the Labor Party are really going to put through. And one of them is to actually have religious freedom laws in Australia, which Albanese is not going to go down that path. No. And where is the report for the Christians who are also being attacked in Australia? I mean, where's the inquiry into that? I mean, like, I got to tell you, you know, none of this comes out well when we look at one group over another. And I think, and you're right about anti-Semitism, because it is alive and well across parts of Australia and certainly parts of Sydney. I represented a community that had a very large Islamic community for many, many years. I actually never had anyone raise Islamophobia to me personally, wow. So that tells you a lot. I'm not questioning that there might be some instances around. But I would have to say, in recent years, you'd have to think there are a lot more anti-Semitic incidences than any other incidences at this point in time, particularly since the hostage crisis. And particularly given that you've got these non-stop rallies and protests and people sort of igniting this level of anger that is making people very nervous. Well, certainly our Jewish Australian community is very nervous.
Well, it's going to be another big weekend, actually. You've got Melbourne, they've got possible violent clashes this weekend, anti-immigration, socialist network and pro-Palestine groups to hit the streets. So it's going to be a fascinating weekend. We've got to leave it there. We're out of time. Tanya Mihalich, David Elliott, good to see you both. Thank you so much for joining me on the show.